Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm doing the 26 random questions tag, which I saw at Bookish, where he considers everybody tagged. And I haven't done a random one that wasn't really about books, I don't think. So I thought it was about time. And if you're wondering why the light is on, it is actually around noon, and it's supposed to snow for the next 4 or 5 days. So the light situation is not going to get better. I might as well just do it. So questions, what was your most recent YouTube rabbit hole? That would be reviews on 4K ultra high definition movies, because studios are putting out their movies again on 4K, but you would be surprised at how varying the upgrades can be. It can be very perfunctory, so you don't need to upgrade, or it can be like an amazing experience. For instance, if you have HDR, high dynamic range, and they do it well, the movie can really look incredible. But if they don't do it so well, it can look the same or even worse. Similarly, when they're sharpening the image or upscaling it and doing a new transfer, if they are, the image can look better or worse than Blu-ray sometimes. So it really depends, and I like to be informed about these things to know if I should upgrade my favorite movies to 4K or not. Some of the times it's not worth it. Like they said the Terminator 2 4K transfer is terrible. They said that the recent Inglourious Basterds one was terrible. So, you just have to learn, find out, and then put it on your wish list and wait for them to be $10. What song is currently stuck in your head? I have two. Blue by Joni Mitchell, because it's close to Christmas. That is my Christmas song. It's a little bit sad, but it definitely suits me, and I love that album and song. So, and then also Well Dressed by Hopalong is incredible. What kind of music do you listen to the most? Alternative rock, folk. I'll have my Discogs music library of all my vinyl linked below, so if you want to check them out, you can browse literally my entire collection if you'd like. What is something you need to get better at? Sleeping. I have bouts of insomnia, but I've been taking magnesium citrate in the mornings, and that's been helping quite a bit. I generally get like 4 or 5 hours now instead of none to 2 or 3, so that's helpful. I could be more patient. I could learn how to use the iMovie app better for these recordings. I'd like to be better at making pastries so I didn't have to buy it. I don't know, lots of stuff. Do you set goals? What are your goals for the end of the year next year? I don't really set goals as opposed to, well, I set goals for work projects, like trying to get a project out the door completed by a certain amount of time. Especially as a self-published author, you pretty much need to do this. You need to have something in circulation so you get residual income, but also the new thing coming out. And this year, and actually most of last year as well, that's been terrible, just because COVID completely shot all of that for me. I have been spending most of my bandwidth just sort of being okay, and then spending the same amount of time sitting in front of my screen trying to write. But the productivity isn't coming. And usually when I am doing a project, I just get completely obsessed with it until it's just completed. But the setbacks this year, which are natural in any project, have been so demoralizing that it just makes me stressed out that I'm not getting the work done, and then the stress makes it harder to get to that, which makes it a longer feedback loop to get to, and so it just sort of spirals from there. When was the last time you lost your temper? I don't know, like full on lost it. When I worked for my old job as an operations manager, I would sometimes lose my temper because the company was unethical, the salespeople were unethical, and I would lose my mind on them, and then my boss would have to call me and say, Fraser, it's not very acceptable to say the F word to your sales group and blah, 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 blah. But eventually I quit that job anyway because they wanted me to be a brand ambassador for them while they were literally screwing the people over in the next seasonal contract, because it was always very specific contracts every single season so that they can min-max their returns while nickel and diming everybody else. And this happened, consecutively for the 10 years that I was there. So yeah, I think that's the last time I don't know, like lost my shit on somebody. But I get mad on the internet sometimes, which I consider to be like a lower form of getting angry. I wouldn't say like lose my mind. I get irritated and annoyed and snipe at people, but I don't like lose my mind about it because they're abstractions basically to me. Do you swear too much? No. Do you spend too much money on shoes? I own like maybe 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, and the last one I threw out because it literally had holes in it. They're slip-ons and I used them to walk to the letterbox each day. And one day when I was walking, it was raining and I could feel the rain like below the soles, and that's when I knew that, those had to go. So that's generally what I throw out. My shoes. I have like a pair of runners for when I'm at the gym, and then I have like normal slip-ons, and then I have boots in winter, and that's it. And my boots just went. The heel actually came off of the boot somehow, and I can't find it. So it must have been when I was, walking somewhere. So yeah, no, I don't spend too much. What is the worst book you have ever read? My initial thought is The Silent Patient, but that's not true. It was actually like intelligible and just poorly formulated and questionable and objectionable, but it wasn't the worst. Maybe in one way The Essential Rumi is, because it misrepresents Ruby himself to the reader, because it's an interpretation of a translation that, what's his name, Coleman Barks, whatever his name is, had on Rumi's poetry. So he didn't speak the language, he didn't translate it himself, and then he westernized it in a very puritanical, religious sort of way. So in one way, and the fact that it's so popular, it's the main way that Westerners consume Rumi, is, I find, very objectionable and very indicative of the co-opting of Eastern philosophy and religion. Unsettling it is for people to be able to translate and inject their own meaning into works without the public knowing, or in some cases even caring. Sometimes they're aware of it and they don't even care. They think that's a valid way to interpret Rumi, which blows my mind a little bit. Another bad book I would say is Go Ask Alice by Anonymous. We were made to read this in junior high and it scared the shit out of me. But then I was told later on that it was pure propaganda and not even real. And so I felt very like violated and misrepresented, and felt like my whole experience to that book was very like engineered and unethical. And so I would consider that a bad book because it was used literally as propaganda against us, and it was effective for many of us. And so the fact that teachers and adults and whatnot thought that that was a okay thing to do to children, I find very questionable. And then the purpose for which it was constructed, I find to also be questionable and objectionable. Are you a homebody or are you adventurous? I'm definitely a homebody. It's weird because I was transient for most of my life, so some people would call that an adventure, but I was working through it. So for 8 months out of the year, I was working a seasonal position, and for the rest of it, I was basically recruiting and training people. So that's kind of an adventure, but not in the way I think it means. Like, I've never been abroad and going on actual adventures. I don't do like zip lining or cliff diving or things like that, where any time where it's just like, hey, if you do this, you could get messed up, I'm probably out. Do you take naps? No, I actually always feel worse after a nap, but I'm excited to enter the phase of my life when that is presumably not the case. Have you ever been to Minnesota, the greatest state in the union? No, I have been to like 4 states, basically all the states that are directly south of Alberta, all the way to Utah, which was the headquarters of my previous position, and to I went to Las Vegas one time as well. Have you ever tried to emulate somebody? I'm sure I have, especially in high school. I can't think of a particular thing, but I will say that all of the looks in junior high, in one way or another, you were looking like one of the Backstreet Boys if you bought at like a normal retail store. And so I definitely have position or photos of me floating around in which I look like I am in a position in a boy band. What is the worst food you have ever eaten? Okay, well, there's a bakery here called Rocky's, and it's the worst bakery ever that I've ever tried. I was very excited when I moved here, small town life, supposed to have a good bakery, that's what cinema has taught me, but no, it's the worst bakery ever, especially if you have their tarts, like pecan tarts. What are those things called? Like those little tiny pie things, you know what I'm talking about? I think it's just called a tart. But anyway, they're terrible, and everything they've ever made that I've tried has been terrible, including just like basic ass Danishes. Like it's all flaky, it doesn't have enough butter in it. It's absolutely terrible. If you go to any grocery store, all of the bakery sections outstrip Rocky's by a fair amount. Do you enjoy bars? What kind? Or are you or have you been a regular at one? No, from as long as I can remember, even as a kid, I don't like carbonated beverages, fermented beverages. So that kind of precludes all of those things. Like I was never someone who went to 7-Eleven and got a Big Gulp or a Slurpee or anything like that, because it's all carbonated, right? So, and I never liked much junk food either, so I was always actually a pretty skinny ass kid. And so I don't ever drink alcohol, and the only time I do is if it tastes like something that isn't alcohol. And I'm fine with that. Like I'll have a Bellini or other things that taste like juice or whatever, but it sort of defeats the purpose because I could just order juice. I don't particularly enjoy getting drunk. I'm always the sober one around drunk people, and so hate that. High strung, I guess you could say, like I'm a very anxious person, so people always think it's fun to get me drunk because it's very easy, but I don't actually like it. Have you ever been hungover? Yes, exactly one time. The first time that I went to a party and drank, and I mixed a whole bunch of stuff, Sambuca, absinthe, different kinds of beer. I think it was Coors Light, wine coolers, probably another 4 or 5 different things. And then of course I puked, and from that day forward I had a smell aversion to that stuff. Yeah, and to this day, every year I'll try like a sip of wine or a sip of beer or whatever, still can't handle, don't even like smelling any alcohol at all. I don't even really like being able to taste something alcoholic in my food. When was the last time you laughed out loud while reading? It's kind of weird, I guess, but I'm reading The Likeness by Tana French right now, and Cassie is an undercover agent with a bunch of college students, and they get up to a bunch of shenanigans that are quite funny, and her propensity for deflating situations or de-escalating them is often to make a joke, and some of them are, bangers. How would you label or describe yourself politically? Left, actually left, not like vaguely left like our political parties. Closer to like socialism, I guess, which Canada already has ingrained programs, such as our medical programs are already quite socialist, so it shouldn't be that strange, but apparently it is. If you know party affiliations here, I'm more aligned with the NDP than liberals, for instance. What was the last movie that you watched? That would have been Spider-Man, the new one, and I thought it was pretty good. Better than I expected. Generally, when I go into these Disney movies, be it Marvel or Star Wars or whatever, I'm looking for just something fun. Do you want kids? Do you wish you had kids? If you have kids, give a piece of advice. No, no, no. Do you get along with your siblings? Sure. I have a twin brother. We have a lot of interests that are shared, but he has a family and kids. He's quite busy. He does the same sort of self-publishing, tabletop role-playing game design work as me, and he's the one that got me into that, so I owe him a debt for that. But he is, I don't really share, intimate, vulnerable details with him, and neither does he with me, really. Sometimes we'll vent to each other, but generally if we talk to each other, it's like an amiable thing about hobbies, stuff like that. And that's the same with all of my family. So, I don't know. And then my sister, who lives in Brussels, obviously I care about her quite a bit, but she is 6 years younger, and I left home before she was in high school. So we don't generally talk much. Again, she'll sort of vent to me sometimes, but we don't have like a rapport. What is a book you have serious issues with but love? Well, the only one I can think of is Catcher in the Rye, but I haven't read that since I was a teenager. And as I mentioned, I was like a very angry young boy. And so reading Holden Caulfield, or Catcher in the Rye rather, it was sort of one of those moments when you're young and you realize like, oh, other people do feel things like me. It's something you don't really come to a realization with, especially as a white guy, probably a bit later than most people, that there's like the concept of other people's lens and points of view and them not thinking like you, and how you relate to that specific thing. I think fiction is incredibly invaluable for that, and so it's one of the most formative experiences that I had reading Catcher in the Rye quite early. But I bet if I reread it now, I would find it pretty cringeworthy, because rather than feeling seen, I would see my old self, which I am very critical of now, and should be, because I was a little bit of a dick. What is your favorite theme song to a movie and or TV show? I guess the only thing I could think of would be Ghost in the Shell, which I bought the soundtrack to after. Same with Blade Runner 2049, Inception, Interstellar. Those are all soundtracks that after I saw the movie, I bought the vinyl afterwards. Do you like your job? If you switch careers, what would you do? I'd like it now. It's a lot more stressful, a lot less money, a lot less of a regular income, right? I don't know where my paychecks are coming from. I generally have to crowdsource each book and then be careful enough with it that I can produce the product and take the earnings and live off of them as well. So that's very stressful, but I like it way more than when I felt morally compromised and unethical when I was working with my former employers as an operations manager. In fact, I had like an anxiety attack about it multiple times before. And so leaving it felt normal, I guess, or, freeing and very good. And I think they don't even operate in Canada anymore after COVID hit. So it wouldn't have been I would have gone down with the ship instead of trying to start my own business, basically. What is something you love about the city you live in? I don't live in a city, I live in a small town. Something I love about it is that the housing prices here was 60% less than the city, which is why I bought here. Who is your celebrity crush? I don't really get crushes on celebrities. I admire their performance sometimes, but it's not like an aesthetic quality that I assign to them. So if I follow a bunch of people, usually on my Instagram, it's usually the thing that I want to see is when they make a new thing. I don't particularly care that they're attractive or whatever. And that's it. So I guess, like Brian said, you're all tagged. I think this has already made the rounds. I've seen it quite a few times, so I'm not sure who else I would tag. It's very hard to know who has done it or not, because sometimes you'll search the tag and the people that come up will be, you'll think you'll have like seen all the results, but then the people who have done it don't show up in the results for some reason. So I don't know what's going on there, but if you feel like doing it, I encourage you to. And if you do it because of this video, you should comment and point me to the link. You won't be able to post the link, but if you tell me that you posted the video, I'll be able to go to your profile and see it. And that's it. Other than that, I will see you next video.